On behalf of the Neighbors, Friends, and Families team, welcome to our Healthy Talks for Young Adults book club for young women, where we're going to be meeting and speaking with the author of Afraid of the Dark. I'm speaking from the traditional lands of the Anishinaabeg, Haudenosaunee, Lenape-Walk, and Adirondack peoples. This land continues to be home to the diverse Indigenous peoples, including First Nations, Métis, and Inuit, with whom we recognize as contemporary stewards of the land and vital contributors to our society. I invite you to think about the Indigenous lands on which you are situated. If you're uncertain about the territory you're on, you can look it up at nativeland.ca. The ongoing work to make the promise of truth and reconciliation real in our communities, and in particular to bring justice for murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls across the country, informs the work of our center. So to begin, I'd like to invite Myrna Kipnoswe, an elder who works from the Indigenous Students Center here at Western, to open our event today. Thank you, Myrna, as always, for sharing your wisdom with us. We've worked in partnership to bring you this event today. So I want to acknowledge both the Thames Valley District School Board and the London and District Catholic School Board for their ongoing collaboration. We also work with Tanya Marie Lee to organize our annual book club events, one for young women and male-identified youth, and the other for young women and female-identified youth. Tanya is the founder of A Room of Your Own book club, which offers teen girls living in poverty a safe space to find their voice, see their potential, and discuss issues they might face, with monthly meetups that include the author of the book we're reading. It's inspired by the sanctuary that the library provided Tanya during her own traumatic childhood. So Tanya launched the program in 2007. She served over 600 students in Toronto. I think that's probably even more. I'd say well over 1,000 by this time. And then many more here in London, because we're really fortunate that once a year, we're able to work with Tanya to bring the book club to London. So I'm going to turn it over to Tanya now and let her introduce our speaker for today, Guyleigh Johnson.
Thank you, Barb. So my name is Tanya Lee, and I will be your host for this afternoon's book club, A Room of Your Own. A Room of Your Own is a girl positive space. This means we celebrate, honor, and respect young women. Anyone who identifies as a young woman, anyone who wishes to support young women, we welcome everyone. As a young and vibrant woman, you can be you in the space created for you, and we'll love you and commend you for it. We celebrate diversity, equity, and inclusiveness. Thank you all for joining us here today. Our book of choice is Afraid of the Dark by Guyleigh Johnson. Guyleigh Johnson is an African Nova Scotian woman, is a published author, spoken word artist, community activist, and arts facilitator from North and Dartmouth. She has a passion for youth engagement, writing, and speaking about topics surrounding healing, leadership, and implementing changes in her community. As the arts facilitator, she teaches youth about the powers of words, emotional intelligence, mindfulness, and mental health. In October 2016, she released her first collection of poetry titled Expect the Unexpected, which is about inner city youth and the challenges they not only face, but overcome. Her most recent release is Afraid of the Dark, which is a story that follows a young Black girl struggling with her identity to navigate her way through society she doesn't believe accepts her. Family drama, community chaos, loss, and growth take her on a journey to finding self. In 2018, she won the Ancestral Root Award for the Written Visual Arts category presented by the Delmore Buddy Day Learning Institute. She recently started a job at Dalhousie University Black Student Advising Center as a young community outreach and transition to university coordinator. She is also part of a government youth working group on gender equality. Whether you follow her on social media or know her in real life, she is starting the conversation for change. Her purpose is to encourage conversation and action. oriented principles toward diversity and inclusion to create opportunities for youth in and around her community. Now let's welcome Guyleigh, and she will recite some of her spoken poetry.
Can you hear me? I just want to make sure the audio is good. So the first poem that I'm going to do, actually, I want to start by saying thank you guys for having me. I appreciate being on this platform and being able to engage with you and all of the young women today. So thank you. The first poem that I'm going to be reading from my book, Afraid of the Dark, is called Living While Black. And bear with me, I just had eye surgery like not even a month ago, so it may be a struggle being in the light, but we're gonna try to get through it. Living while black. The color of my skin shadows me as I walk. The depth in my voice shakes why I talk, because I'm trying to avoid myself like you are. Sinking myself in the seat, forgetting good posture, because you're staring at me like you see a monster. Slowly scratching my skin, trying to tarnish the glow. Dark, yet invisible as a ghost. I hope I don't scare you. How dare I be black, be bold? Why would I stand oath? See, what you don't know is my color is something I can't let go. Tomorrow I'll still wake up black, even the day after that. It's called Living While Black. Just make sure. Okay. Perfect. The second piece that I'm gonna do is called Where I Live, Chaos is Normalized. Sirens blasting past my window like music. Arguments where adults yell provocative words like they're compliments. Garbage situated in the front of the house like a garden. Kids using sticks as guns like the characters they watch on TV. And me. See, those other poets like to say rhyming words about the grime that we live, but they never seen a real homicide as a kid. Yellow tape around the playground like someone's having a birthday party. Caution. See, the things they rhyme about, I don't have options. I walk outside and see the forensic unit searching. No missing person, because he was found lying on the ground. And with each step I take past the white vans, I still have to make it to work by 8:30. Listening to people complain about the washrooms being dirty or the freaking coffee. I'm standing by the office thinking about coffins, wondering what face his mother made when they told her who the unidentified teen was. Where I live, chaos is normalized. We mourn him today and go on about our lives tomorrow. Not because he's not special, but it's how we live with our mental. Where I live, chaos is normalized. The last poem that I'm going to read is actually from my first book, Expect the Unexpected. And I always like to end with this one. And it's called Lotus Flower. Just one second. Okay. Lotus Flower. I am the significance to your heart. Never falling apart, I connect with your mind. With both combined, my soul bleeds your purity. My mind craves your growth. I emerge from the depths of dirt, far from hurt, I bloom into a beauty unimaginable, almost impossible flower. Though the soil I come from is in the sling of a swamp, still I rise. I rise into a soul that streams a great significance of spreading strength spiritually. The lotus flower I am, the dirty seed I used to be, doesn't define me. What defines me is the state I'm in after surviving the struggle. It's not where you come from, it's where you end up. Some of the ugliest places create the prettiest people from the inside out. Lotus flower. Thank you.
Guyleigh, that was beautiful. Thank you so much. Okay, so you know what I want to tell you? I was going to bring that. I was doing some research on CBC and I found some quotes. So, and And I wanted to talk to you about some of the quotes from CBC, and then we'll get into the book.
Okay.
So you wrote, I grew up in Dartmouth, and the struggle of coming from what society deems as low-income communities, criminalized, marginalized, and threatening. I realized Dartmouth made me who I am. There was so much more depth to this place and the people in it that society would like to give credit for. Especially as a young Black youth, I realized we were innocent. We were being judged by our environments, our appearance, outer appearance, without understanding our circumstances or knowing us as human beings. Would you like to elaborate a little bit more about that quote?
Yes, I can. So coming from the north end of Dartmouth, I would say like I was a curious kid. So I was always looking to engage with new people or find like new experiences, especially ones that weren't being offered in my community or even in terms of jobs. So finding employment, a lot of the times coming from these kinds of communities, you don't always get to have employment in your own community. So you have to go elsewhere. So in going to all of those places and always having to explain who I am and where I'm from, I would always see the scowls on people's faces when I told them where I was from, or I'd hear them tell horror stories or things like, you know, they would never be caught walking through North End Dartmouth. When they drive through, that they lock their doors and they put up their windows. And it always made me wonder, like, why do people think of us like that? Or why do they think of this community like that? Like, did they ever have the personal experiences with us? You know, have they actually engaged with us, talked to us, and had conversations? So when I wrote, I grew up in Dartmouth, it was kind of just trying to give people that eyes view into like how we grew up and how our circumstances have shaped us, but realistically getting to know us. If you understand all of these aspects, like you'll know that we're good people.
Okay. And it was like such a coincidence, but I loved your poem Lotus Flower. And you said, as you said, lotus flowers grow up in the darkest, dirtiest, muddiest swamps, undeterred from its environment, and they still sprout with a glow. That's usually how I write. In my lowest, most troubling experiences, I produce art. Does that sum up your creative process?
Yes, I would say that sums up my creative process. I think that the way that I view writing is a coping mechanism for my mental health. So I find that when I am in those dark moments or when I am feeling down or when I'm going through like a seasonal space of like self-doubt or trying to figure myself out or even in what is surrounded in my environment, I do find that's when I write the most. And it's also when I have like the most feeling. So it's like there's like that emotional connection to the art.
Okay, great. So who inspired you to write?
Um, I do like I do have like writers and artists that I love. Like one of them is Maya Angelou. I always loved her as a poet. But growing up, I just think writing was a thing that I've always loved. Like I remember doing it as a little kid, like especially as a little girl, always having diaries, always having journals. In school, my favorite subject was English, so I was just always writing. So I feel like that's what really gained my interest in writing. It was like a different space for me when I wrote.
Okay. And when did you start your journey as a spoken word artist?
I would say like in my teenage years, so maybe around high school. I remember like there used to be this show on TV and I would see like slam competitions. And I always thought it was really cool. And I never thought of my writing like in that sense, like that I could actually say it out loud like that. I really just thought of it from the point of view of like people reading it. But seeing the slam competitions, it was like something that I've always wanted to do. I haven't got as far as doing an actual slam competition, but that's what forced me to start saying my words out loud. And then I would actually like recite those poems to friends. I would do it in the cafeteria at like lunchtime, like just to hear people's opinions or thoughts on my writing. And then I probably did my first performance maybe somewhere around like grade 11 or 12. So that's kind of how I matured myself into spoken word.
Do you remember your first performance?
Yes, my first, I was thinking for a second because I'm like, where was it? My first performance was actually at the Boys and Girls Club. I think I think I was approached by somebody who read a poem before, so I've never actually spoken any of those poems, but they read one of the poems and they asked me to volunteer for the Walk of Violence at the Boys and Girls Club. So that was my first performance.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, so next question is, why did you want to write this book, Afraid of the Dark?
At the time, I was working for the school board, and more specifically, it was Black History Month.
Mm-hmm.
And because this is like a problem within our educational systems, is during this Black History Month, students actually weren't learning any Black history. They were learning about other people or like history that had no connection to them. So being an African student support worker, I had people in junior high come to me and they would constantly complain about like not learning material that they could relate to, not learning about Black people's experiences, or being forced to read books to them that they deemed as boring or that they were not touched by. So that's kind of what started that process to writing Afraid of the Dark, because I wanted those students to feel seen and heard, and I wanted them to finally have material that they could relate to and that they could understand and that could generate conversations for them. Like maybe it's uncomfortable things that they're not used to talking about. So this would be the conversation starter for them.
Okay, so they say that reading promotes empathy, right? So, and I really loved reading this book, and I had this deep connection to Kahlua. What did you want the reader to take away from reading your book? Like, what type of experiences do you want them to say like that they had when they were reading your book?
I wanted the reader to take away empathy because I wanted them to, not even just Black people, I would say like all people. I want people to be interested into stories that they're not used to hearing so that they can start to relate to people of all different backgrounds and experiences, and then be able to sit around with their friends or their classmates and have conversations about those things. And specifically, like with the character Kahlua, I wanted especially young Black girls to realize that a lot of us, you may not feel everything or you may not have experienced everything that she's experienced in her life, but I wanted you to be able to connect with certain parts of her, like that we all have self-doubt. We've all been in uncomfortable situations where sometimes you might have been the only Black person in a room or in a classroom. Or when you're in a classroom and they talk about Black topics, how everybody seems to navigate their eyes to you, and how you just you feel invisible, but at the same time you feel too seen. So I kind of wanted people to just, especially young Black girls, to take away the importance of sharing who they truly are, and not always having to be a part of your environment. So yes, there can be things that are going on in your environment that are bad, but not necessarily having to adapt to that to survive, like not always being in survival mode.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so was Kahlua Thomas based on a real life character, or who inspired her?
I would say yes, in terms of a
Or
real
were
life
there
character.
many people?
Yeah, it wasn't so
Okay.
much a specific person. I would say that it's multiple people. Like, so it's multiple stories that I've encountered or people that I've seen, and things that they've experienced, and I've kind of grouped that into one person.
Okay. All right. So my next question is still about Kahlua Thomas. There's a lot of young women who can probably identify with Kahlua Thomas. And so I call them the Kahlua Thomases of the world. What advice would you give to them?
The advice that I would give to them is to stay true to yourself. Being you, I always say this, being you is being real. I would say to talk to people about your experiences. So like, you got to find people that you trust first, but then, because as there's things in the books that she experienced that were like traumatizing things, and it talks about like mental health and like how in the Black community, a lot of the times we continue to sweep things under the rug. So my thing would be that they could take away is like, especially as Black women, because when you grow up and you become a woman, there's going to be more things that you're going to want to harbor or keep in and sweep under the rug. And it's like, society has conditioned us in a way to normalize these thoughts and to always convey ourselves as strong and resilient. And I just wanted them to know that strong and resiliency is talking to people, it's getting help. It's realizing that so many things that we were conditioned to are not right and they shouldn't have been normalized, and how to kind of break through those barriers. But I would say the main message kind of would be just to stay true to yourself.
Okay. And I have a couple of quotes that I really loved in the book. That night I became a soldier in this life called war. I feel like every child in the Black community is at war. Some of us with the system, some with the community, some with each other, and even some with ourselves. I knew every day after that would be a fight. I could either be the punching bag or the person that throws the punches. When speaking to other authors, they say that every day when they write, they are with their character. They live with their character. They go into the environment with their character. They feel what their characters feel. What was it like writing this part of the story? Is it based on personal experience?
I would say, yeah, that it's based on personal experience. Because at the time that I was writing this, I was going through a period of feeling like that. Like it's either like life and all of those structural systems are punching you, or you're the person that's like fighting back. So yeah, I would say that.
Okay. And another quote I like I went through this too. I guess I should tell you a little bit about myself. I'm 16 from Halifax, Nova Scotia. I'm Black and I'm poor. I hate being Black more than being poor. I'd rather be poor and accepted than rich and unwanted. I remember growing up and I was like, okay, if I could only be white tomorrow, all my problems would disappear. Right. And I wouldn't feel the way I feel, and everything around me would be perfect. Just everything around me would be perfect. My life would be so much better. And it never happened. When I woke up, I wasn't white. Right. Like as much as I prayed, I'm like, God, please make me white. It didn't happen. And so what would you say for anyone who feels this way? Like, what would you say to this individual right now?
I would say that that is again, it's due to like those structural systems, especially whether that's in our family or even in our schools. So like the lack of information that you learn about your history and about your heritage. So that's kind of what creates that self-hate, because it's like, well, without the pride instilled in who you are, where you come from, it's like that lack of self-identity, which forces people to think like that, if you are white, things would be better, or, that that's the way that you need to be. But I would say to tap in more to your heritage and to your roots. And if you come from a family that you're not necessarily going to get it from your family or your inner circle, you have to kind of do that soul search within yourself, and just research things. Like I say the same thing, like growing up in my school systems. I remember the first time that I heard about Black people or even Black history was in grade 3. And all it was that we were slaves. And it's like, coming from the family that I come from and knowing all the things that I know, and then hitting grade 3 and you're telling me that all my people were slaves, doesn't really instill self-pride. It doesn't make me feel good about myself. It doesn't make me feel confident or feel like I can conquer certain areas or avenues. So I think like in grade 3, after hearing that, instead of it going the opposite way and creating that self-hate or that self-doubt in me, it made me more intrigued. I wanted to learn about Black people more. I did more research. I went to the library and I sought books with Black authors. Like I looked for things like that. So I would just say, like, if you don't have those kind of people around you, and we know that our educational system isn't updated like that yet, do your own research, do your own work.
Okay. And then another quote, on the pages of Loose Leaf, I want people to understand what it's like to be Black. the mental and physical state of having social and economic inequalities that puts chains on your life. To come from where I come from and feel no peace, just emptiness, the instillment of hate for ourselves and eventually each other, the injustice of dealing with the law enforcement, being denied basic human rights based on the color of your skin. When you try and fight the system, you're ridiculed, criticized, and accused of asking for too much. I'm not even talking about the past tense. All of these issues are current and the effects of them are damaging to our heritage, culture, and roots. For youth confronting this reality, or for someone trying to understand this reality, what do you want them to take away from your work?
I want them to take away that empathy piece. I think like empathy is like a part of me. So it's like when I write, I'm constantly thinking of how to drive or how to build that bridge to connection. And it's like, so when I say quotes like that, or when I write my poetry, it's like, I want you to see us outside of the things you've heard about us. I want you to truly understand our experience. I want you to feel our feelings. Like, I want you to step inside my shoes for even a day, just to try and understand where I'm coming from. Because I think that with racism, it's a lack of ignorance, and whether it's by choice or not, like that's what it is, and that's what's happening. So I feel like from my writing, what I would really want people to take away is that empathy part for other people. I think like empathy is what is going to save us in this world.
Okay, and I'm going to see right now questions. We have one question so far. Okay, so if you have questions, please start asking them. In Staying In or Coming Out, Kahlua discusses a group for giving men in the neighborhood an outlet called Guys Without Guns. Page 116. Is this, or will it be, if it isn't still in progress, an actual group?
No, not an actual group. Kind of like when I thought of that, it was like my vision for what I'd like to see in community, like us creating programs or opportunities for people to experience new things and to start talking about mental health and taking mental health more seriously. So yeah, not a real group, but definitely something for the future.
Okay, so if you have any questions, please do put them forth in the Q&A. I'm sure Guyleigh would love to answer all your questions. Don't be shy. You can even put in your favorite quotes from the book as well, and I'll read them out. So let's get the conversation started. And I have like a couple more. Okay, so in one of your poems, Reveal, you read, "Love, what exactly is it? I remember fantasizing about it, growing up, getting married, having 3 beautiful children, and living in a big house. Disney movies set us up with false expectations of Prince Charming and how he would sweep us off our feet because we were women, and that automatically made us weak and helpless. We spent our whole lives thinking the only way we'd be happily ever after is if a man saved us." So I believed in this like all my teenage years. I kid you not. Like I'm like, okay, so Prince Charming is gonna come and he's gonna take me away from my life, because my life was like, it was very chaotic and it was filled with a lot of abuse. And I'm like, so he's gonna come, he's gonna save me. And then I started growing up. I'm like, yeah, Prince Charming's not coming. And then I started studying, like going to university, started taking women's study courses, and I learned critical thinking skills. And I'm like, what was I thinking? Like, seriously, what was I thinking? So I wanted to know, would you think of writing something for young girls to look up to instead?
Yes, I actually would. That's a good idea. In trying to navigate my third book, that's kind of more of the avenue that I was going. But yeah, I do think that we're conditioned as young women to constantly always look for that escape. I think it's what also sets us up with that false expectation too, of always thinking that somebody has to save us from something, or that they have to complete us or give us the happiness, instead of the reverse, of if you were a young girl or a young woman and somebody was instilling self-love in you and the importance of that, then your idea of love wouldn't be based on dependency.
Yeah, that's so true. Okay, so this is from Amika Hosan. What's your favorite part of Afraid of the Dark, or do you have many?
Yes, my favorite part. I'm trying to think. I think my favorite part is it's like the end chapter, and it's kind of like when she's going through her release. So it's like she sees her mom, she gives forgiveness, and she's kind of like she's starting to get that self realization and that critical thinking and realizing the importance of self-love. So she's starting to begin that healing process and finding herself. I think that's like my favorite part.
Okay, great. Okay, so we have some more questions. Do you believe that people who are racist are born without a sense of empathy?
I don't believe that people are born racist. I believe racism is taught. So I think that they're taught to not have empathy, yes. But I don't believe that they're born racist. I think like working with kids a lot, you notice the innocence in kids. It's just like it's back to like I think I even talk about this in the book, like the blank canvas. It's like kids are so free flowing, and it's like they only know that they're only going to know and be groomed to what it is that you teach or that you tell them. So I think that in terms of people becoming racist, it's definitely taught behavior. So whether that starts in your family home or whether it starts in your educational institution, so what you're noticing, what you're seeing, how other people treat people, I definitely believe it's taught.
Okay, so when did you write your first poem?
I don't know an accurate answer. I would say kind of around grade 3. Like those are my earliest memories in terms of like writing, and I definitely would have wrote poetry back then.
Oh, grade 3. Wow, that's amazing. Okay, was it emotional for you when writing this book? This is from Ivy.
Yes, Ivy, it was really emotional. Like I said before, there were certain parts that I could connect to for Kahlua, and a lot of it, sorry, that's my mom. A lot of it was the mental health part. So like writing it, even reading it back, even through like the edits and stuff like that. And because at that time, like I was telling you, I was going through like a lot in my life. I felt like I was dealing with a lot in terms of my employment, dealing with like racism and stuff like that. So writing these experiences and trying to, and not trying to, but living out some of them at the same time, it was really emotional for me. So the writing part of it was therapeutic in terms of that release, but then in terms of rereading it or writing more, it was definitely emotional.
Okay. So I have like okay. There was somebody who wrote one about, oh yes, would you be willing to share your faith journey?
Yes, I can share my faith journey. So growing up, I've had very faithful grandmothers that always talked about God. I had a mother who talked about God a lot. Same thing in my younger years. I remember attending church. And I remember going to like the kids part, like so when church actually starts and the kids have to go in the back and you interact with other kids and you learn about stories of the Bible. But it wasn't until my teenage years that I started to feel like my own connection with God and my own faith. And then I started to do more research, again back to like my personal research part. I started to do my own research in terms of like reading the Bible and stuff. And then as I got older and as I was becoming a woman, I just like I relied heavily on God. And I started to understand what he meant to me, especially dealing with grief. So like dealing with people dying around me. So whether it was like grandparents who were older, or then even at that time, there's like a lot of young people in our community dying to like gun violence and stuff like that. So it was like that kind of pulled me closer to that faith. And then I ended up getting baptized. And same thing, it's been a very good journey. Even today, I rely heavily on prayer, meditation, manifestation, all of those things.
Wonderful. Okay, all the questions are pouring in. Okay. Okay, there's one. Okay, hold on. Okay. How long does it take you to write a poem?
It depends. Like, it depends on what it is, like the message that I'm trying to convey. Like a lot of the times, especially now in a technology world, in my phone, I write notes. So like maybe if I see something or I'm inspired by something and it ticks off something in my brain, I'll write down a jot note of like a couple of words or maybe sentences that rhyme. And then I could stop right there. Excuse me. I could go back to like my normal day, doing normal things. Excuse me. And then usually I'm most inspired at night. I don't know why I'm that kind of person, but I'm like the person that's up at like 3 a.m. And it's like that's when everything from the day, like everything that I've consumed all day long starts coming to me. And that's usually when I finish poems off. So
Oh,
I would say it really does depend. There's times when I write poems literally within an hour. There's times when it takes a day. There's times it takes weeks. There's times I may not finish it until a month. So it just depends on the piece.
okay. And I have a question from Raquel Silva. Reading your book, there was a spirit of truth that was universal. As a woman, as a daughter of an immigrant, I caught myself amening in my head. So thank you. My question is, what advice would you give teachers in addressing Black history and racism to not make Black students in the classroom feel welcome, not targeted?
I think that in terms of that, it has to become a regular part of curriculum. The thing with diversity and inclusion is like it can't be this focus or this focal point for like one day, 1 month, one theme or one thing. It has to be very normal as like everyday stuff. Like it shouldn't be something where people have to bring it to their attention to create that diversity and inclusion. And I think that in terms of not making people of color feel that they are targeted, especially in those scenarios, like when I talked about, like, if you're talking about something that has to do with Black people or whatever, and you are the only Black person in the room, that thing of where everybody looks at you and, you know, it feels uncomfortable and you want to like sink in your seat. I feel like if you talked about Black people more, if your classroom reflected that, if your school reflected that, if the materials in which you taught reflected that, it wouldn't feel targeted, and it wouldn't feel unnormal to those people hearing those stories, and it wouldn't feel like it wouldn't feel claustrophobic to be in that experience. So I just think that in terms of educational thing, and even this year, I've seen a lot of people, especially in Ontario, trying to push for that, getting curriculum like that to be an everyday thing, to be normal, to be taught inside of schools.
Wonderful. Thank you. Okay, so let me go to the questions. This one's from Madeline. Do you come up with the concepts and then start writing the poems, or just start writing and see where it takes you?
I just start writing and then I see where it takes me. I don't, there's times, like sometimes if I do workshops, just because for other people, it's maybe harder to start, I'll tell them to start with a concept. So maybe something they can relate to, something that they like, start from there and kind of brainstorm to create that. But for me, myself, I would say I kind of just go with my concept. Like even for the title, I don't come up with a title until my poem's finished. So I would always say that I guess I go with the concept first and then I figure out the rest later.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, have you come across creative block? Creative, like, sorry, your block creatively?
Yes, I experienced that a lot. I don't know if it's connected. I'm a procrastinator as well. I don't know if it's connected to procrastination. But there are times when I feel that. And when I do, I kind of just see it as time to rest. Like I don't force myself to write in those moments because I don't want to create pieces that I'm not connected to or ones that feel unauthentic. So I kind of I just take rest. I don't write in those periods.
Okay. Okay. If you could pick one person to read your book, oh, where was it? Who would you want to read it?
Michelle Obama.
Oh, yes. Okay, good. Okay, so I have this other question. So it's an anonymous attendee. I struggle with the annoyance of being privileged and being Black. I have had a life of things that I wanted, but soon loomed the talks of killing my expectations and laying low, turning the other cheek at every microaggression. This angers me. It has all my life. Thank you for creating a safe space.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay, this is from Jamel Kane. I feel you're really, really knowledgeable and easy to talk to. So where can we or us get to know you better or better learn more from you just to connect with you?
I have a Facebook page, Guyleigh Johnson. You can follow me. I have an Instagram. I can plug it in the chat afterwards. It's Cream Get Money. And I do have a YouTube channel. I haven't posted in a while, just because of a lot of things that I've been going through. But for 2021, I definitely will have some more content.
Oh, wonderful. Okay. Okay, so are there any specifics? Oh, this is from Vivian. Are there any specific spaces where you go find inspiration in writing?
No, to be honest, my best inspiration is my bed. Like I'm telling you, at 3 a.m., I don't know why 3 is a significant number for me. I was born on the 13th. My birthday is actually this
Nice.
Saturday.
Oh, happy birthday.
Yeah, in my bed at nighttime, I'm telling you, that's where it's like the light bulb goes off, the inspiration comes. I will say too that being in my community, it provides a lot of inspiration for me. So like I walk a lot. I visit like a lot of spaces in my community. And I think just constantly seeing people that I grew up with, or even just seeing people gather in my community, that always inspires me. So the connection to community and being able to see it and be a part of it always inspires me too.
Oh, how wonderful. Okay, so we got some more questions. Were there any books, types of media that affected your writing?
Trying to think of how they're framing that. No, I wouldn't say. Like I'm guessing that they're thinking like where they're like, was there already material made that was like stopping me from creating mine? I'm guessing that's kind of where that question's going, but no, I wouldn't say that.
Okay. Okay, so the next question is, how do you tell your parents about what you wanted to do in life?
In terms of like writing, this is literally how it went. One day I came home from school and like I told you, I was like reading poems like in my cafeteria to my friends and stuff like that. And one day I came home and I just had the urge to share. So my mom was laying on the sofa and I was just literally like, I wrote this piece today. And I read her the poem and she starts crying in the middle of the poem. And I'm like, why are you so emotional? And she's just like, I can't believe you wrote that. Like she didn't believe me. And then she asked my dad to come here and then I had to read it in front of both of them, which was awkward. But I did. And I just remember them like reassuring me that I had a gift, that I was talented, and to pursue it in whichever way that I could. So I would say from the beginning, they're both like just really supportive of that journey. And at the beginning, I didn't even know, like, especially at that time, that you could have writing as a career. Like, I never grew up to know like any Black authors or artists, to know like, okay, that's who I want to be, though, that's the footsteps that I'm following in. So I never really knew that writing a book would be a tangible thing for me. But yeah, even when I figured out that I would be a writer or that I would do poetry, they were just both supportive.
Oh, how wonderful. Okay, so we have another question. Is there a reason for the capitalization of beginning the love in the poem Love?
Um,
That's Morgan Vording.
I gotta look at it. Beginning. Oh, backwards. There is, but it's I feel like somewhere's in it that's like the word evolve. I think that's what it comes out to be. My eyes are so bad right now I can't see it, but I believe that's what it's for. It was kind of like the wordplay of that word being throughout that thing, kind of like love evolves.
Oh, yes, that's right. I remember that. Okay, that's right. Okay, hold on. I got a couple more questions. Okay, so in the poem Hood Princess, I thought this poem was written with such a keen observation. It really hurt me to read it, knowing that so many young women growing up don't know their value and their worth. Like, what did it feel like for you to write it?
It was sad to write that. But I think that it was kind of like the way that I was thinking of it is if somebody read it and they felt a connection to it, it would kind of spark that thing in them that they would need self-love, that they need to validate themselves first. So that's kind of the angle that I was going on in terms of like writing that piece, kind of that if somebody read it, that they would start to realize their own validation, the power that they hold, and then how to validate themselves.
Okay. And then, okay, so, oh, and this one, Men Get Choices, page 54. Okay, so, okay, I'm just saying it's a really good poem. So why did you decide to put this poem in this book?
Because I think that in the kind of society that we live in, and even in the communities that we grow up in, a lot of the times you see people that grow up without father figures. Or if they do have father figures, a lot of the times it can be like an inconsistent relationship. So kind of writing that was like, it was just showing like that power play of how it seems like men have so much choice when it comes to like these kinds of things.
Okay. And what have men said after reading the poem?
I've never, like, no one's ever specifically pointed out that poem. I did have a guy that read Afraid of the Dark from start to finish, and oddly enough, he had a lot of connection to it and the character, so that was good to me.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. Okay. Oh yes. Okay. And this one, people say I'm intimidating on page 64. This is what so many Black women and young Black girls have to go through throughout their lives. This was expressed beautifully in the poem. The term angry Black woman has been used a lot. How do you feel that we need to break down this stereotype and this caricature of Black women?
I think that comes with humanizing our experience. So it's kind of like what I said before. Like so many times we're it's not even just society. So many times we're conditioned to always be strong, to always be resilient. And then it's kind of like society expects that from us. And that's where we kind of get that angry Black woman term from, or that we're like aggressive, we're too loud, we're too much. So in terms of breaking that down, I would say that for me, it's humanizing my experience. It's showing my vulnerability. It's showing myself in different lights. And then not allowing people to attach those stereotypes or those biases towards me, like sticking up for myself in those situations. And again, just showing that I do have different emotions than what it is that they constantly keep trying to label or convey me as.
Okay. Wonderful. Okay. So, oh, I love, okay, you know what the poems I love? Burdens versus Blessings, page 81. Oh my goodness. I wish like, even though we're in a webinar, I wish we could all just like read this poem together. You know what I mean? It's so beautiful. Like what you wrote that you would tell your future daughter. I think it's so, so beautiful and so needed. Like, I'm just gonna like, I wanna like, can I get permission to frame it and put it up on my
Yes.
wall?
Yes, you
Yes.
can.
Ah, thank you. It's so beautiful. Like, so I hope everyone goes back and reads that and really takes something special from it. So I think like every daughter needs to like see that. Okay, so do we have any more questions? Or I see Barb coming back on.
I was just going to say, Tanya, do you have your copy of the book? Maybe you want to read the poem for us.
Okay, sure. Okay, I'll read it. Okay, so burdens versus blessings. Okay, I'm not going to read it as great as Guyleigh. I'm just letting you know. So let me just try. Open letter to my future daughter. What if I told you this world is dark, cold, and ugly? What if I told you your world, your whole life, they'll try to convince, blame, and force you into believing it's you? What if I told you you'll be confused and some parts you'll believe are true? What if I told you that they'll downplay your features, assets, and accomplishments, never being recognized or acknowledged as qualified? Even the ones that look the same will try to tarnish your name. In the hierarchy of life, you will be labeled lower than men, less than women. They'll criticize before they copy. They'll laugh and be envious. They'll take with no apologies. You'll cry and cry and cry until there's enough tears to drown in. You'll question your purpose. The more you crave the need to be saved, they'll remind you you're worthless. You'll pray to be different, not realizing you're already quite unique. Weak. You'll fall victim, but you'll never be allowed to call yourself that. They'll disguise forgiveness as forgetting. They'll hate you to the point you hate yourself. You'll break and break until it feels like there's too many pieces to fix. But what if I told you this? World wouldn't be the same without your existence. What if I told you you're stronger than the weapons formed against you? What if I told you on your back those aren't burdens, but the spirit of your sisters, step by step as your heroes? What if I told you you are smart, beautiful, and warm? What if I didn't warn you about the world? I warned the world about you, the fearless force and fighter you are, the roots of richness you reach from. Dear daughters, you are magical. As much as I love you, I want you to love yourself. That's how you shield yourself from the darkness to get light, the cold to be warm, and the ugly to remain beautiful, not hiding but protecting your soul. You're not just a queen, you're a Black queen. Carry your crown with pride. Never lie because your truth is powerful.
Good job.
Well, not as great as you, but thank you. I really love that. Thank you for writing that. It's so beautiful. And I think like, you know, so many girls need to read that, whether you're Black, white, like whatever color you are, you need to understand like how beautiful, smart, intelligent you are and the like what you have to offer the world, and don't let anybody take it away from you.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So do we have any more questions? No more questions?
If we don't have any more questions, then I want to thank you, Guyleigh, first of all, for writing and then for sharing with us. And I want to thank you, Tanya. You bring us the most wonderful authors and so much wisdom, so many opportunities to get to know ourselves better and each other as well. So this has really, truly been a wonderful conversation. I know in the chat some people are asking if we're going to have access to it again. And yes, it's recorded. There's some links in the chat where you can find it. And we'll make sure we send out a reminder with a link. So again, please keep writing, Guyleigh. We want to hear more from you. You have a really important voice. And Tanya, did you want to say anything?
Oh, just thank you to everyone for joining us. Thank you for having us, Barb. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you for everyone who helped put this book club together today. Thank you to all the participants. Loved your questions. It takes a team to put on this amazing book club, and thank you to the team.
Thanks, Tanya. So I think to close, I'm going to ask Myrna if you'd like to come back and help us close this circle, even though it's a virtual circle.
Oh, and Colleen Morkowski said, thank you for sharing your talent. Yay.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm not sure if Myrna's able to come back or not. So I'm not going to be able to close out like Myrna would have, but I just want to add to the thanks that everybody's expressed for coming together and our opportunity to be here together. I hope that you all have a good evening, and I hope that you'll continue to join us in these talks in our Healthy Talks series. You can get information about what's coming up at the Neighbors, Friends, and Families website. So take care, everybody. Have a good evening.